Thank you, Bart. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here when the sun is shining outside. What I know is that Buffalonians never stay indoors when the sun is shining outside, so thank you. So food, never met a person who didn't eat it, didn't think about it, but met lots of planners who never think about it. So my 10 minutes is going to be about hoping that you will join my team and convince planners in your community to think about food. So first of all, when I say food, what am I talking about? I'm talking about not just the food that shows up in front of us when our partners and children and wives and parents put it in front of us, but how it gets to that place from the beginning to the end. How it gets grown, how it gets processed, how it gets distributed, how it gets cooked and ends up with us. That entire thing is what I call the food system. Now that system is largely invisible to most of us for good reason. It's a pretty complex system. So I'm not going to go into the details of that, but share with you maybe some levers that all of us collectively can push to make things better in our region. Why food for planners, especially for sustainable planning? For decades, I would say half a century, planners have paid a lot of attention to things like transportation, housing, economic development, but they have forgotten the one fundamental thing that keeps us going. It's imperative that in our region we change that. Historically, not a single plan in this area addresses food in any meaningful way. We're going to change that with all of your help. Buffalo is not just, it's not that Buffalo is behind, it's that planning in general is behind in the United States. So in a recent national survey, we asked planners working around the country, do you think about food when you build places and neighborhoods? And we had about 2,200 responses, and 30% of respondents said, we think about food. We do something about food. So something has to change. Now, what a good food system looks like will look different in our bi-county region. It'll look different in other places. But we intuitively know when we like it. So there's a picture from one of our fabulous spots. Some of you can probably identify where this is. We could make it better, but we know that this works for us. Maybe that's a text question. What is that picture on the slide? But that picture is really not possible to improve or make better or make accessible for our bi-county region, which has a lot of local governments and players involved in it. What's even more complicated for food is that there is not a single person in local government in Erie and Niagara County whose job it is to think about the food system. Take a second and think about that. People are paid to think about economic development, transportation, housing, etc., but not about food. There is some good news which I will share shortly, but for now, there's no governance structure in place, no local government, no planner, no city official who's explicitly thinking about the health and well-being of our sustainable food system. So we've got to change that too. To change that, in like every good community development, change in food system really has to trickle up literally from the soil. It has to build assets in communities that we can learn from and sustain. And fortunately that's happening, and I'll share examples. Actually, Lamar will give you examples at the end. How we proceed to network those efforts that are happening in neighborhoods and build assets up will impact the health of our food system. So I have a very small example for you and then a longer one. The small example is this lot, again in one of our neighborhoods in our bi-county region, which could have been just a vacant lot. But that is a community garden that people are growing food on. It's aesthetically pleasing, blending into the neighborhood, and also raising food, healthy food, impacting people's budget, improving public health. So by virtue of transforming a small piece of land in a neighborhood, these group of people have really hit many different goals that planners and community development people have. But what does the data tell us about whether we're really headed in the right direction, or do we need to be cautious so that we do head in the right direction? So in our bi-county region, we are losing land that would be used for food production, while we're not adding a lot of people. You've heard this story probably from other speakers in this session as well. But let me add detail to that about what that means for food. First of all, keep in mind that we cannot create more land. We might print more dollar bills, but land is a finite resource. At least last time that I checked. Within this bi-county region, where our land is a finite resource, we have 12% of households who don't own a car and live very far from a supermarket. So the only way they are going to get physically to food is if they grow it themselves or depend on public transportation, etc. So a whole bunch of planning decisions will impact whether they get to food. And the land, let me tell you a bit more about the land. In the land that we do have for food production, the number one crop that we grow, or let's say the top two crops, is not for human production. It's for other things. It's for animal feed, it's for other things, but not for human production. I mean, human consumption. That pattern of what we grow, how far food is from people, is directly impacting people's health and quality of life. And I'll throw the number 11 to 12% because I know all of you will only remember one number. So just keep 11 and 12% in mind. 12% of households too far from food. 11 to 12% of households depend on public assistance for food. Supplemental nutrition assistance programs, that means they can't make ends meet and have to depend on public assistance. Close to 12% have diet-related disease, diabetes. And then there is one other staggering number, which is that only a quarter of us in our region eat fresh fruits and vegetables. We're not meeting our food needs. And in the meantime, we're using our land use patterns, developing our land to grow things that are not edible, not good for us, and very limited fruit and vegetable production. Then one other piece of information, and I will end with data after this slide. If we were to eat healthy as recommended by our physicians, and we tried to produce that food in our bi-county region, any guesses what percentage of that food we would be able to grow? I want a ballpark. 60%, 70%, 50%? 50%, raise your hands. One. Less than 50%, raise your hands. Yeah, it's actually less than 20%. So we are not really a self-sufficient community right now under our current land use patterns. Okay, end of bad news. Good news. We've got an incredible wealth of assets. Just our food economy in our metro region is about $4 billion a year. It's about 10% of our metro economy. We've got great farmers, food processors, distributors, and of course, great customers who really care about their food. So we've got a lot going for us, but we need to connect those pieces. So I'm going to show you an example of who is connecting those pieces. And I just use map because I like to embarrass Lamar. But there are a lot of groups in Buffalo and Erie and Niagara counties that are doing this, and I'm happy to share information. So there's lots of problems, potential opportunities. So I'm going to talk about Massachusetts Avenue Project, which is a not-for-profit. It's a bit awkward since MAP staff and kids are here, but I like talking about them, so it's okay. So MAP is a great case, in my mind, of citizen planning in action. A group of people who are taking land on the west side in this case, but also elsewhere now, to rebuild our food system, especially through kids, teaching them how to grow, how to process, how to distribute, and most importantly, how to be social change advocates. And Rebecca mentioned Lamar serves on the Food Policy Council. She didn't mention that he ran for the council and got voted on, and it was a tough competition. And he's only one of 2 youth on the council. The reason that this social change at the neighborhood level is important is a planning issue, because sometimes planning and policy, public policy, has to learn from change on the ground. So the example on this slide, believe it or not, we have a lot to learn from chickens. Chickens were forbidden in the city of Buffalo until recently, until West Side residents and MAP and other allies advocated for change in our city's ordinance to permit raising chickens in the city. And congratulations to the city of Buffalo. We do now allow a certain number of chickens on a lot. And we are unusual in the Bi-County region, and in fact, a lot of other municipalities are looking to Buffalo as an example. And I put that slide there because I don't think this would have happened unless citizens in the Bi-County region would have been demanding change. It's important for the culture to change and for demand for food to come from the ground. So MAP trains youth in a lot of work around food processing, but also about thinking about the food system. So this picture is from MAP kids going into stores and auditing what stores are carrying in our Bi-County region. So I have 3 minutes left. So I gave you very quick snippets of what is going on at the ground level, but what can you do? Collectively, we have a lot of power which we sometimes don't recognize. On the left side are ideas just for things that I don't even have to talk to anybody about. I can do them immediately. Eat in the season. It will encourage all of us to think about what's available. So therefore, technically, we will more likely see what's grown in our Western New York region. And the second one is lose the package. If it comes in a package, you are putting a lot of your effort and money into supporting something that's not from outside our region. And then the third one, I often begin with a question. How many of you, those of you who know your doctor's name, please raise your hand. And then turn around and look at each other. Doctor's name. You don't know your doctor's name? Physician's name? Okay. And now if you know your farmer's name, raise your hand. You're an unusual crowd. So typically, everyone raises their hand for their doctor's name and they don't raise their hand for their farmer's name. But we have some great farmers in our community. And then the final one is to support a community garden. In Erie County, Buffalo specifically, we have an organization called Grassroots Gardens of Buffalo, which supports community gardens. But really, there are community gardens in both counties and a great opportunity. On the right side are actions that are more policy related, that you can translate your personal interests into bigger actions and tie into a larger movement. The first one is to review the comprehensive plan in your municipality. And I'm sure somebody else has talked about comprehensive plans, and I suspect most of you are here because you already care about comprehensive plans. I said at the beginning of the session that plans traditionally never say anything about food. And I think my dean will forgive me if I will say that the plan that he spearheaded in Buffalo also doesn't say much about food. But he recognizes that, and the city of Buffalo recognizes that. So the next step to that comprehensive plan in the city of Buffalo is in fact a fantastic transformation of tackling food issues. That piece, I think Chris will touch on, it's called the Buffalo Green Code and Land Use Plan. But every municipality, so you live somewhere, Every municipality has a plan and a zoning code, except in some cases. Check that and see how food is being treated. And then 2 actions. And if you are in Erie County, do run for the Buffalo Erie Food Policy Council. It's the only entity that will allow you to make public policy change and have a voice into the policy making process. In Niagara County, if you are a resident of Niagara County, please consider joining Healthy Food, Healthy People Coalition. It's a new coalition, but they have requested that you enter information into that survey, and this information will be available to you. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to your questions.